First of all, I'd like to apologize for not being able to speak Portuguese. Unfortunately, my Spanish is even worse than my Portuguese.
My talk is about the DNS Flag Day campaign. I'm Hugo Salgado from NIC Chile, the .cl CCTLD registry, and I'm going to show you what is it about, why it matters, and how it affects us. This talk was presented in the LACNOC meeting this year in Rosario, Argentina, and in the OARC DNS meeting in Amsterdam, and was made with the collaboration of Sebastián Castro from Internet NZ. And I want to give a special thanks to Petr Spasek from NIC.cz, who maintains the official website and some of the tools. Okay, so what's the DNS Flag Day? It's a campaign driven by the four main providers of DNS resolution software that are there: Bind, Unbound, PowerDNS, and Cannot. I'm backed by some of the main public DNS resolution service providers, like Google, Quad9, and Cloudflare, that aims for a change in the way the DNS resolution works, that can have direct consequences for current domain names around the world. So if you're going to leave this presentation with only 2 points in your mind about the DNS Flag Day, these are: one is a worldwide campaign, and two can cause the death of certain domain names. But this is for a better internet. So, what's the problem? The key is eDNS, the extensions of the original DNS specifications that are far from new. As most of you already know, the DNS is one of the oldest protocols in Internet, with its foundational RFCs being published in 1987, 40 years ago. The original DNS had a limit of 512 bytes per packet and very few space for new options. So 30 years ago, there was a major advance in DNS with the standardization of a way of extending the original DNS, the eDNS protocol. These new options were backward compatible, meaning that you could coexist with the original DNS, but deploy new features at the same time. Thanks to eDNS, these new extensions allowed many improvements to DNS and created an ecosystem about it. One of the most important is allowing more than 512 bytes per message, a mechanism that allows many techniques today, like SPF with TXT messaging, load balancing with multiple A and quad A records, etc. But more than size, these extensions allow new techniques such as DNSSEC, the security extension to DNS. And there we have a lot more of new techniques and improvements. So, what's the problem? This deployment of the eDNS protocol has lasted more than 30 years. In the first years, the resolvers had to create some workarounds to be able to resolve certain domain names that were served by all DNS authoritative software, which lacked support for eDNS. But these workarounds had been there for 30 years, and several not compliant authoritative servers never solved its problems because, hey, it worked. But worked because of the excessive robustness of DNS. The problem is that after 30 years, this workarounds causes many problems to resolvers, like code complexity, delays, and it takes a lot of effort to evolve to new techniques. So now it's time to stop doing workarounds and let the pain be suffered by the ones who deserve it. This removal of workarounds has to be made in a coordinated way because no one wants to be the one who forces standards and let bad domain names die and letting your competitors the perceived advantage of being able to resolve those domains. So the main software developers agreed on a date for releasing its updates without workarounds. So after this date, all the updated or new installed releases will have no support for workarounds, letting bad domain names die without resolution. Also, the most famous public DNS resolution services will start to force eDNS resolution 2, like the famous 8888 and 9999, 1111, etc. Google, Quad9, Cloudflare. Now, some data. How many domains will be affected? We measured several top-level domains with a tool developed by ISC, the ones that make bind, and NIC.cz. We can start with the zone of a TLD and then send some special craft queries to detect eDNS compliance. Here are the first ones, the first TLDs we analyzed, but now we have several more from LAC-TLD region that are being analyzed since 2 months ago. These are the tools we used in our study. The first one gives many details, not only for eDNS, but several other standard metrics. But for this study, we focused only on the eDNS one. The second tool allows some performance enhancement to allow batch processing and send the test to several domain names at the same time. The numbers, the domains for LATAM. The numbers are very similar in CCTLD's levels, all being around 1% of domain names with serious problems. This 1% of domain names will be unresolvable after the DNS Flag day. And because of its name servers have problems that would cause server fail for its domains. In the .arpa reverse zone, we have a worse percentage of failures, but by the characteristic of reverse zones, we know they're more concentrated in less name servers. In this case, we identified only 3 name servers being the culprit of 23% of failures. In the forward zones, there's more diversity of name servers, and so it's more difficult to correct. Thanks to registro.br, who analyzed the .com.br names, we also have the figure of 0.72% of domain names which could be dead after the DNS Flag day. I will not dive in many details for these slides, but here we have an example of the cascading of the tests we apply for each name server. This diagram shows that if we fail in one of the tests above, there's no sense on testing the categories below. But here you can see there's like a 15 or 20 tests that try every feature of the EDNS protocol. Here we have a comparison between several ccTLDs and the root servers. Root servers are good as a base comparison because they are fully compliant. And we have here the comparison with the original ccTLDs that we tried. As an example, here's one of the tests. Here we send a specific query, a valid query towards a name server, and we wait for an answer having certain fields so we can detect anomalies or lack of an answer. This is to test the basic DNS protocol. Here we have another one comparing DNS with the EDNS version 0. And here we have more problems. Also, we only have EDNS version 0 for the moment, but there are already some conversations on moving to EDNS version 1. Any EDNS compliant server should be capable of answer to EDNS version 0 queries and reject with the right answer to the non-existent DNS version 1 queries. One thing that is important to note is that EDNS compliance don't force to implement EDNS at all. There are actually error codes for the DNS servers which don't want to implement EDNS, which is a serve fail error code or a form error code. The servers have and always had a mean to signal lack of support for EDNS. And these answers are completely right. The only wrong answer is not answer at all, or answer something unexpected by the protocol. This test is for DNSSEC compliance with the DNSSEC OK opcode in the EDNS headers options. Sorry. This is a more complicated query with a lot of EDNS options, subnet and cookie. This is the more complete query that we send. Also, we compared IPv4 versus IPv6 answers, looking for differences by protocol. And actually, we had some observable differences, and we are digging in to have more information. Also, we're doing these measurements in a monthly basis to have data on the evolution of the space. We have measurements from October and since today to today. But in summary, 1% of errors, easy to fix. In .CL, we have a campaign contacting the top ISPs and hosting companies with major problems. But it's not easy to contact the right people and to get to the administrators. So then our next step was to send an email campaign to the current domain name holders to alert them of the problem with their domain names and have them as customers to press their hosting and DNS providers. So, how can I check my domain name? Very easy. There's one web tool that anyone can use in dnsflagday.net site, which look like this. Here we write our domain name in the box, press the test button, and wait a few seconds. This JavaScript sends the same test we showed in the previous slide to the ENS of the domain name and gives a resume of the results with a graphical sign. Fatal error is where all the name servers were not compliant, meaning that this domain name will be unresolvable after February 1st. There is a green icon too when all the name servers were okay, and a yellow one when some of them failed, meaning that you could expect a slow resolution. Also, for real hackers and sysadmins, there is an expert tool that gives a lot of detail, including each individual test that failed. This one. This tool can also be installed locally, so you can run tests in your own network with confidence. Here we see each test result individually, and a command line, I don't know if it's visible, a command line to repeat the queries with the expected right answer. The interface is not so friendly, and the test descriptions are a bit harsh, but there's a link with, to the relevant RFC with the protocol basis for each one of them. Finally, how can I correct the errors? Two main points. Use a modern DNS software and avoid putting an inspecting device in front of it. Having a firewall or a deep packet inspector on the front of a DNS server is a recipe for problems. The consensus is to let the DNS server software to answer all the DNS queries, not only for compliance, but also for performance. Many of the bottlenecks of traffic with DNS DOS attacks are with the middle boxes that are incapable to bear with many packets per second, but DNS software can cope with it. In our experience solving several problems with companies, there's an 80% of chance of having a firewall dropping certain right queries, so the DNS server never receives them and the resolver never gets an answer. So use a modern implementation, fix your firewall rules, and retest. A future work. We're committed to repeat our analysis as long as the DNS flag day occurs and afterwards. Each CCLTLD has its own campaigns in its community to reach out and alert its domain name owners. We hope to have a pleasant DNS flag day, in spite of that last phrase there. So that's all. Muito obrigado. You can use Portuguese for your questions or comments. I think I can handle the slow spoken Portuguese.
Any questions to Hugo? Hello, my name is Douglas Fisher. I am quite curious with your presentation, but I have a question. about the approach. What are the affected DNSs? Authoritative, exclusively, recursive, both? Which ones? Which one should be treated specifically?
The authoritative servers that need to be compliant. The change will be in the resolvers in that side, but the ones that need to be corrected are the authoritative ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
this tool allows you to test it with a resolver that gives the details.
I asked that question regarding the difficulty you mentioned, how to approach network managers to correct that. If it's difficult to get closer to those that care about authoritative, let alone the recursive, which are almost impossible to be reached. Thank you. Any other questions? We still have time. I would like to make a comment, Hugo. Actually, it's a comment to Douglas, who has asked the question. The DNS Flag Day, as Hugo said, they will remove the code of recursive ones. So, in fact, once companies and ISPs update their recursive ones from 1st February, the new softwares will no longer have the workarounds to live up with those problematic or troublesome authoritative. So, those campaigns right now, they aim to notify those domain names with those problems authoritative servers, as those domains will no longer work once the softwares are updated. February 1st is a date about the new releases of recursive servers. But those who have problems in the authoritative server will not have that interrupted immediately, but will start facing some resolution problems. As Hugo said, several CCTLDs will notify their clients with problems. Similarly, the register BR in Brazil. You from NIC.br. I'd like to report my experience and comment about networks with problems in their authoritative and ENDS with two large content providers. One of them that was in the category that, well, it's going to become a bit slower. After a few minutes, that was solved. However, with the other one that is in the category, you will die on February 1st, they did not do anything yet. So we probably have a Darwin moment by February 1st, and we'll see those who care and may survive, and those who do not care and will die.
Working now, you don't need to fix it, so we have to wait to the moment with problems. Okay, thank you.
So, as there are no more questions, thank you so much, Hugo, for your time and participation.